Good evening from the Westfield Insurance Studio Theater in the Idea Center at Playhouse Square in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm Karen Kassler, Bureau Chief of the Ohio Public Radio and Television State House News Bureau.
And I'm Russ Mitchell, news anchor for WKYC Channel 3. Welcome to this primary debate among Democratic governors for Ohio. This debate is coordinated by the City Club of Cleveland, a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization and one of the oldest free speech forums in the United States. The City Club drafted tonight's formats, and the rules have been agreed to by all the candidates.
Media partners are IdeaStream and WKYC Channel 3. We welcome those watching on the Ohio channel, on the live stream, and of course to those here in our studio audience. This
60-minute debate is divided into two segments, each 30 minutes long. In the first half, Karen and I will ask the candidates questions. In the second half, we're going to take questions from the audience, and one of those questions will come from Twitter. If you would like to submit a question, please do so by tagging at the City Club and use the hashtag OHGovDebate. OGovDebate, not OHIO, OGovDebate. Here are the rules. Candidates will have 60 seconds to respond to questions directed at him or her. Due to time constraints, candidates will only have the opportunity to offer rebuttals at our discretion. Rebuttals will be limited to 30 seconds. Now, the questions have not been shared with the campaigns, and not every candidate will answer every question.
The audience here in the studio has agreed to remain silent so that we can focus on what the candidates are saying. However, we welcome you to applaud after we welcome our candidates, Connie Pillage, Joe Schiavone, Betty Sutton, and Nan Whaley. We are now going to have opening remarks. Candidates, a reminder that you will each have 90 seconds for your opening remarks. The order was determined earlier today, and we begin with Betty Sutton.
Thank you and good evening. I'm Betty Sutton, and I grew up in Barberton. I come from a working class family. My dad was a Boilermaker, and my mom worked at the local library. And I've dedicated my life to standing up for families just like the one I grew up in, fighting for fair wages and good jobs. My parents worked hard and they tried to save up to retire for dignity and make sure that all of us kids had a good opportunity. And when I'm governor, I'm going to fight to make this state the opportunity state. We're going to push back on the rigged political system, and we're going to create a state that no matter who you are or where you live or what your dream is, you will have a way to seize it in Ohio. That's what I've been doing my whole life. I did it as a city councilwoman in Barberton and on the Summit County Council, as a state representative in Congress, and as the head of the St. Lawrence Seaway Development Corporation for President Obama. And I know that our best days are ahead of us. And I know this from the fights that I have fought that we can win them. The system is powerful, but we are more powerful. From fighting to save 60,000 jobs in the auto industry to pushing back on the bad policies coming out of Columbus, to standing up to the big banks and on behalf of working families, I know that we can change our direction. And as your governor, I will not quit until we transform our state into a state that works for everyone. Thank you.
Betty Sutton, thank you. Joe Schiavone, you have 90 seconds for your opening statement.
Well, thank you very much. You know, after the last debate, a lot of people were saying all of the candidates seem to agree on a lot of the policy issues. So I'm going to start the debate by talking about something that we don't all agree on. You know, I'm the only candidate on or off this stage that can win a general election. We can't roll out the same reused politicians with the same rehashed message. If we don't get somebody that goes out in communities and gets people excited, that works for the people, that people understand has always been there for them, we're going to give this back to the Republicans yet again. You know, my parents always taught me growing up that actions speak louder than words. And so when I'm going back to communities today, they remember when I was there 6 years ago for Senate Bill 5, when I stood arm in arm with them fighting back against what the Republicans did to working class families. They remember when I went to their kids' school to talk to the teachers and talk to the parents about things we can do to make public education better. They remember when I sat in their living room and talked to them about the Republicans ripping out people with disabilities out of our DD centers and putting them in the private sector to people so that people can make money off them. They remember this stuff, right? And so this isn't political rhetoric. It's not talking point legislation. It's the fact that people want a fighter, somebody that's always been there. Working class families are with me because I've always been with them.
Thank you, Joe Schiavone. Nan Whaley, you have 90 seconds.
Well, I'm Nan Whaley, and for the last 4 years, I've had the honor of serving as mayor to one of Ohio's great cities, Dayton. One thing I want you to know about me is that you may not always agree with me, but you will always know where I stand. A true leader takes a stand. A true leader is willing to lead with her values and not be afraid of bold new ideas and change. That's the only way to accomplish anything as a progressive mayor in the reddest part of our state. We need a governor who's going to stand up for us, a governor who knows how to get things done. And as mayor, that has been my focus, getting things done, from creating jobs, providing paid parental leave, to passing high-quality universal pre-K for all of Dayton's 4-year-olds. Getting things done for everyday people is what drives me. It isn't just my job, it's my passion. And because I've worked with every community, and only because I've worked with every community in Dayton, we've been able to accomplish so much. I'm going to take that same approach as governor. We need a governor who's going to work in every part of the state, from farms to factories, from small towns to big cities, from Lake Erie all the way to the Ohio River. Some say Ohio's best days are behind us. I don't buy it. If you believe Ohio's best days can be ahead of us, I hope you'll join me on this race for governor.
Nan Whaley, thank you. Connie Pilic, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I'm Connie Pilic. I am so happy to be here. I grew up in the shadow of a big steel mill, and I saw that industry collapse. And I have a message to everyone out there who's feeling left behind. I will not forget you. That's why I have an 88-county strategy. I will campaign in every county in Ohio before this year is over. And everywhere I go, people tell me they want leadership. They want solutions. Folks, I got the best leadership training in the world as an officer in the United States Air Force, and I am ready to bring that mission-focused leadership to the office of governor. That's why when Premier Health and Anthem withdrew from the insurance exchange, I proposed a public option. Let anyone buy Medicaid or the state lawmakers' health insurance. It is time for health care to be a right and not a privilege. And that's why when Donald Trump withdrew from the Paris Climate Accord, I said Ohio will join the U.S. Climate Alliance. It is time for us to make sure that we take the lead and use the possibility of growing jobs in the renewable energy industry. You know, Ohio could sit back and let other states take the lead, or we could step up and we could be in charge. Send me to Columbus and I will lead us into the future, and I will never abandon my mission. It is time for new leadership in Ohio, and yes, in 2018, it is time for a woman to lead this state.
Thank you. Now for the questions. Every candidate will have the opportunity to answer the first 2 questions with no opportunity for rebuttals. We have time constraints here. Each candidate is allowed 60 seconds per answer. We will begin with Joe Schiavone. Last week's announcement that Republican opponents Mike DeWine and John Husted will run together was called a power deal and a game changer. What do you think about that? And what do you do if Richard Cordray enters the race as expected, since he'll come in with better name recognition and a national fundraising base?
Starting with the real softball, huh? All right, so I don't think we can worry about, as Democrats right now, who's running in the Republican primary. You know, people were asking me all day long, what do you think about this merger? Truthfully, I don't care. You know, that day I was in Kent State talking to young people about how we can deal with student debt, talking to them about how we can deal with college affordability, talking to people about what's important in their life today. That's what Democrats should be concentrating on, not what's going on in the Republican primary. You know, just because people know you doesn't mean that everybody likes you. And so that name recognition thing starts wearing on me a little bit. You have to earn name recognition. You can't just magically, it just doesn't magically appear. And so every single day going from community to community and really talking and listening and really taking feedback from people and then turning that into plans in order to make their lives better, that's the way that you earn name recognition, and that's what we've done in this campaign.
Betty Sutton.
Thank you. Well, I disagree with Representative Schiavone or Senator Schiavone because I do think we need to take seriously what the Republicans are doing. Times are serious and so are they. And we need someone who can go toe to toe with them and beat them next November, because if we don't win, we don't get to do anything. And Mike DeWine and John Husted have been running this state for too long, and it's all wrong. And I am a person who's tested and vetted and tried, and who has a record of jobs that is unparalleled by anybody on this stage or their stage. I also stood with President Obama to pass the Affordable Care Act. I have spent my life pushing back against the rigged system. I have earned my way through the ranks of government, not part of any elite crowd. We will take them on next November, and I look forward to it.
Connie Pillage.
Thank you so much. It has been very interesting to see how the Republicans have coronated who's going to be in charge of our state for the next 12 years. And that's exactly what it is. That's what they're called. That's what it seems like to me. And I don't know about you, but we have elections in Ohio. I don't know who they think they are telling us who's going to be our governor for the next 12 years. We have elections in Ohio. And as for my friend Richard Cordray, gosh, he was our one voice of hope in D.C., one voice that was standing up for consumers. The Consumer Finance Protection Bureau processed over 1 million complaints and returned almost $12 billion to consumers. And now Rich Cordray has abandoned that post and he's turned it over to Donald Trump, but he left no organized succession plan in place, and it's chaotic. We need someone who's going to be here for the long run and someone who is not going to abandon her mission.
And Nan Whaley.
For sure, what DeWine and Husted represent is 60 years of time in the State House. 60 years. The same old leadership over and over again, not creating jobs for our state. I think the state is tired of it, and that's what I'm betting on. I think that what the state's looking for is a new kind of leadership, a leadership that comes from the ground, that is about executive experiences and really knows what's going on in their communities. Those guys, I mean, they'd rather take the word of a lobbyist or a CEO than listen to somebody on the street. And as a mayor, you are where the rubber meets the road. Those guys don't even know that we have roads in Ohio, believe me, because they won't fund them. So I think that is the big difference for us in this race. And as Democrats, it is serious. It is serious, but we need to make sure that we have a voice that's authentic, real, and new.
Thank you very much. This next question deals with the growing and seemingly insurmountable opioid crisis in the state of Ohio. And Nan Whaley, we'll begin this with you. In 2015, the last year complete stats are available, Ohio had the 4th highest overdose rate in the nation. That's death by overdose rate in the nation. And last year, Dayton became the worst big city in the nation for drug overdoses. What is Ohio doing wrong, and how do we fix it? Again, 60 seconds.
Well, in 60 seconds, Ohio has not really paid any attention to the issue of 4,055 people dying last year in our state because of accidental overdose. 80% of them have been on prescription pain relievers. So we have to hold the drug companies accountable for this mess. They started it in our communities, told us this stuff was not addictive, and said, and it is. So, as governor, I'm proposing a surcharge, a nickel per dose, for every single prescription pain reliever. The manufacturers should pay for this. We can make sure that they're the ones. They're making huge profits on this stuff. We can make sure that they pay for every single time. That will help us have a sustainable funding source. This is about justice for taxpayers, justice for people that have lost loved ones, and justice for the people that are fighting with addiction in our communities every single day right now.
Connie Pillage, you have 1 minute.
The opioid crisis is the largest public health crisis of our century, and we have got to attack it from all sides. And that means we got to start with prevention. My first line of prevention is to make sure people have a good job, the dignity of work, and the ability to support your family. And we have to use every resource available to us to educate Ohioans about the dangers and the deadliness of these pills. Second, we have to have effective treatment. And that means we have to keep those Medicaid dollars flowing, because that pays for the treatment for thousands of Ohioans right now. And anybody, particularly on the other side of the aisle, who says we don't need Medicaid expansion is telling you they want Ohioans to die. And finally, enforcement. We've got to come down hard on enforcement, get these drugs off our streets, out of our state. But we can't do any of that if we don't refund our local police department and EMTs who are on the front line. It's been defunded for 7 years, and no wonder we have a crisis. I'm amazed that the GOP finally woke up to that.
Betty Sutton.
Thank you. This is our hurricane, and we need to declare a state of emergency so that we can have the resources to wrap around a comprehensive approach to dealing with this problem. Mike DeWine has watched as this has erupted across our state, and now he says he wants to sue the drug companies. Well, yes, we should sue them. We should hold them accountable, but we also need prevention. We also need education. We need more beds for treatment. We need jobs and opportunities for everyday Ohioans, because nothing stops the needle like a job and hope for a future. These are the things that leadership should bring. It is shameful that we hear the city of Dayton being called the capital of the heroin capital of the country. That is not the Ohio we want. That is not where we want to be. Our people deserve better. Mike DeWine hasn't given it to them, and he won't give it to them, but I will.
Joe Schiavone, 60 seconds.
Yeah, as I travel the state, almost every community says we feel like we're the epicenter of the problem. I mean, when you have counties renting refrigeration trucks to put dead bodies of overdose victims in because they don't have room in the morgue, I would say that that's a major crisis. And so I've stood on the Senate floor and I've fought incredibly hard with a bill crafted to allocate 10% of the rainy day fund towards the opiate problem. So we have $2 billion sitting in a rainy day fund in Columbus that Governor Kasich won't touch. 10% would go to education on the front end, police, enough funds for the police to do their job on the ground, and rehabilitation and retraining as people are exiting rehab centers. Just because we get somebody clean doesn't mean that that's the end of the road. Their family's disconnected. They don't have adequate transportation. They don't have housing. So we have to help them reintegrate everything back into their life. And the last bit of dollars should really be spent on beefing up the foster care system, because we're losing these young people every single day.
The remaining questions will be directed to two specific candidates, each as a reminder, and for a reminder here, no rebuttals are permitted unless a candidate specifically calls out or mentions his or her opponent in the response. This question is for Connie Pillich and then for Joe Schiavone. The now three candidates on the Republican side have rejected Republican Governor John Kasich's Medicaid expansion, saying it's unsustainable, and the legislature has shown that they are not fans of it either. So if elected, what would you do to keep it? Connie Pillich.
Thank you for that question, because Medicaid is very important to our state. I'm going to fight to strengthen Medicaid itself by by requiring competitive bidding so that your dollars are spent in the most effective and efficient way possible. And I'm going to fight to retain the expansion of Medicaid, because without it, 700,000 Ohioans will lose their health insurance. 26,000 of them are veterans, and a quarter of our hospitals will close. Can you imagine the impact, not just on access to health care, but jobs in different communities that will have? And frankly, when we've been talking about the opioid crisis, if you eliminate Medicaid, diminish it in any way, or eliminate Medicaid expansion, people in Ohio will die. And finally, I want to open up Medicaid so that anybody can buy it. Let's put a public option on the exchange. Let people buy Medicaid or the state lawmakers' health insurance, because if it's good enough for the politicians, it is good enough for the people.
Joe Schiavone.
When I first started in the Senate back in 2009, we didn't have Medicaid expansion. So what we had was people that had insurance and people that didn't. And the people that didn't had to go to the emergency room for almost everything from, a sore tooth to a cut finger to a broken leg or the flu. And so when we started giving working poor the ability to participate in Medicaid, they then had a primary care doctor. They could then go to the doctors when they were sick. They could go get their tooth pulled when they needed pulled. They can go to rehab services after surgery so they can go on to a healthier lifestyle. Now, Medicaid expansion is expensive. And if the federal government does not continue to fund the lion's share of Medicaid expansion, we are going to have to either find a way to find those dollars to fill that hole, or figure out different revenue sources. It is a very, very tough issue, but the first line of defense is to urge the federal government to continue to fund this program, because we are truly helping people live healthier lifestyles.
Our next question goes to Betty Sutton and then Nan Whaley. This is a question on crime, which of course remains a big issue in many cities throughout the state of Ohio. Cleveland was recently named by one law enforcement group as the 5th most dangerous city in the nation. As of today, 117 people have been killed in the city of Cleveland this year. As governor, what would you do to help police departments and local governments solve this problem? Again, Betty Sutton, we'll begin with you.
Well, we have a lot of work to do in terms of criminal justice reform as well as keeping our community safe. And we have to support our police officers together with our communities. We need to bring people to the table so that they sit around the same table and work for solutions. We make sure that we put police officers on the streets in a way that will keep all of our folks safe. When I was in Congress, I fought to get more police officers into our communities to keep us safe. Community policing is an important part of our future. It will help us to build relationships that will engage both the community as well as police officers to reach out to make sure that when things don't look right, when things don't look safe, that they will communicate that to the people who can make a difference. I will do anything and everything that I can as governor to work with local law enforcement officers and our communities to give them the safe communities that they deserve.
Nan Whaley.
As a mayor, I face this challenge every day. We're the ones on the front lines receiving calls when something happens in a neighborhood, when something happens to a police officer, or when something happens to someone's family member. So I know this issue intimately. And the best thing the state could do is actually fund local communities. What they have done for the past 8 years has continued to cut local communities, and when local communities don't have the dollars, they provide less police officers. Police officers then have less time to do true community-based policing and really create relationships across cities. I think that's why we've seen this increase in cities across the state. Further, we have situations in cities that are dire when it comes to just basic resources. The mayor of Lorain testified at the State House that his police cars are breaking down on the way to emergencies. The reason why we have this problem is the State House crowd, those two guys that have had 60 years of experience, have decided that they'd rather give tax cuts to corporate friends than pay for the desperate services we need in our communities. As governor, I'll make sure that doesn't happen.
Thank you.
Next question goes to Joe Schiavone and then Connie Pilic. Road construction costs keep going up, but gas tax revenue is going down. Local governments are responsible for maintaining more than 80% of public roads in Ohio. Other states have raised the gas tax. That seems unlikely with this legislature. Should Ohio do that anyway, though, or at least try? And if not, or if you can't get that through as governor, what do you do with infrastructure without raising taxes? Joe Schiavone.
There's no doubt that we have a crumbling infrastructure system. You know, I proposed a bond bill that would deal with underground infrastructure systems for clean water so that we put thousands and thousands of people to work and we pay for it by bond investment rather than raising taxes. I think a similar thing can be done with roads and bridges. It's really important that we invest in our future. You know, if we don't have good roads, we don't have clean water, we don't have the infrastructure in place to have businesses come into Ohio and say, this is a place we want to do business, and we don't have the people with the skills necessary to fill the jobs, then they don't come. And infrastructure is the beginning, the first thing we must do. You know, when it comes to a gas tax, I would be in favor of a small gas tax that goes specifically to roads and bridge infrastructure. You know, no BS where you just throw it in the pot and then you never see it again like with the lottery profits. We're talking about a dedicated tax stream for infrastructure. That would be something as governor that I would support. I think we have to be creative in ways in order to build our future, and investing in our infrastructure is just the first way.
Connie Pilic.
Thank you. Infrastructure is an incredibly important part of our state, and it's the second point of my 5-point jobs plan because it puts people back to work and it makes our economy move better. And when I talk about infrastructure, I do talk about roads and bridges, our interstate connectors, and our rail. But I also want to focus on making sure we have clean water and that we upgrade our aging sewer systems across the state. We have to have excellent communications infrastructure, somewhat like the fiber optics that's here in Cleveland, but also high-speed internet access all across the state if we want to compete in the 21st century. And finally, we have to focus also on our energy infrastructure, not just the current energy sources that we have, but growing our renewable energy resources. I do agree with Senator Schiavone. A bond issue is an excellent source of funding. It's a creative, and the people of Ohio get to vote on what they want to spend their money on. But I also think we may have to explore other sources of revenue, such as instead of using a gas tax, which had people who use the most gas pay for the roads, have some other source that measures how much people are using those roads.
Thank you.
Our next question goes to Nan Whaley and then Betty Sutton. While Ohio's employment rate has been defined as steady, at least statistically speaking, over the past year or so, as of September of this year, the number of unemployed workers in the state has increased by 21,000 in the past 12 months. What's your plan to bring jobs back to Ohio? Nan Whaley.
Well, this State House crowd over the past few years has basically claimed that what they've created in this economy is an Ohio miracle. But what we're seeing is more like an Ohio mirage. They want you to see job numbers that aren't real, tax cuts that don't exist, and more cuts to local communities. So as governor, I'd make sure that we create good paying jobs. There's great opportunities around investment, like the previous question. Those kind of jobs provide for a family. But quite frankly, even the cuts to our schools and local communities are affecting good paying jobs. I met Nancy in Lake County. Nancy's been working for a public school district in Lake County for 16 years. Just this year, she was able to make over $30,000. She just passed $30,000. That's not enough for Nancy to provide for her family. So she told me she went and got a job as a cashier at a local grocery store. Obviously, not the Ohio miracle in Nancy's pocket. We need to have an investment in making sure that we have quality jobs in the state.
Betty Sutton.
My record on jobs is unparalleled on this stage. As a member of Congress, I fought back when the auto companies were in distress, and we created a program, Cash for Clunkers, that created 60,000 jobs. I worked to put construction workers and teachers and firefighters back on the job through the Recovery Act, as well as the SAFER grants. And when I'm governor, we will create a Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity that will be focused on increasing jobs and wages and pathways to those jobs and wages and opportunities for everyday Ohioans. Because I know that when people work hard, they ought to be able to make it. They ought to have a good quality of life. They not only should succeed, but they should do well for themselves and their families. And when we have a Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, we will cut through the silos that hold people back. We will unleash our potential, and people will be able to achieve those dreams like your family and my family have, to work a good job and have a good life.
A reminder that you are tuned into Debating Ohio, a primary debate among Democratic candidates for governor. We are coming to you live from the Westfield Insurance Studio Theater in Playhouse Square in Cleveland, Ohio. The debate is coordinated by the City Club of Cleveland. Media partners are IdeaStream and WKYC Channel 3.
We're now going to transition to the second part of our debate, where we take questions from the audience. These questions were submitted by audience members and vetted by the City Club's debate committee and media partners to avoid duplication. They have not been shared with the candidates. Now, if you are following us on Twitter, we hope you are, we'll be taking one question from a Twitter follower. If you would like to submit a question, please do so by tagging at the City Club and use the hashtag #OGovDebate. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to answer each question. We're going to begin with Connie Pillage. So let's go to our first audience question. Fire away.
The Ohio Supreme Court ruled Ohio's system for funding schools unconstitutional 4 times because of an over-reliance on property taxes. Presently, 55.62% of school revenue comes from property tax, the same as the year of the first Ohio Supreme Court decision 20 years ago. This means education quality is still being determined by zip code. As governor, would you address this inequity? If so, how?
I absolutely will. Over the last 7 years, our education system has fallen from 5th in the nation to 22nd, and we are going the wrong way. And it's precisely because of the deliberate steps taken by the GOP in Columbus to undermine our public schools. That's why I introduced an education stimulus package to make universal pre-K a reality for all our children, have a robust, balanced K-12 curriculum with a focus on the STEM fields so that our kids are ready to go right into the workforce, into a skilled apprenticeship program, and to community college or to college. And yes, my plan has a means to make college debt-free for middle-class Ohioans. And for our teachers, they need excellent training. They have to have effective evaluations and have fewer standardized tests. And for the taxpayers, yes, we're going to fix the funding formula, we're going to make it constitutional, and we're going to eliminate those for-profit charter school scams that are ripping off our taxpayers and shortchanging our kids.
Joe Schiavone.
So let's talk about how to fix the funding formula. That was the question. You know, it's been going on year after year in the State House where, you know, the senators and House members just kick the can down the road. They send out a spreadsheet to all the school districts and say, you're getting this year, you're getting this next year, no rhyme or reason. So we need to fix that. We need to invest in our future. We need to invest in a meaningful way so that the school districts aren't begging the local voters for dollars every single year. That's what the DeRolf case said. We need to invest in our schools, right, so that we're not over-reliant on property tax. So let's do it. Let's close up failing charter schools. You put that money back in the pot so that you can invest in your public schools. You make sure that you're making targeted investment, not wasting money in places, because that's what makes people mad. You make targeted investments in each particular district. So you need a governor that's going to set up a Department of Education that's going to go from one community to another, find the needs of that particular community, and make that meaningful investments into the kids' futures.
Nan Whaley.
This is a big issue for cities all across the state and certainly the over 600 school districts. And what we've seen the state continue to do is take cuts, pass them on to the schools and the cities, and then pat themselves on the back in a belief that they've cut taxes, which they have not done, because then the communities have to go and raise property taxes, which has become exasperated across our state these past 8 years. And then, to make matters worse, they open ECOT and charter schools to their crony friends where they can take $60 million off the top and no one is held accountable. So as governor, well, number one, make sure that, you know, the money actually goes to quality schools and close failing charters and make sure that this ECOT stops. And then secondly, we need to invest in our communities and our schools. Because what happens right now is we're seeing more inequity across Ohio. Those communities that can tax and those that can't do without. And that's not okay for Ohio's children.
Betty Sutton.
Things are out of whack. It's a matter of priorities. There is nothing more important than educating our children for our future. Now we have the Republicans, and they're focused on tax cuts for corporations and those at the very top. It's an old trick. But what they do is they shift the burden down onto taxpayers. They shift it down to the local level and onto our schools. They make people go out and they have to beg to pass a levy. But the truth of the matter is, if we really do want to fix our schools and the funding formula, and I do, then it has to be priority one. That's why with the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity that I'm going to create as governor, we're going to focus on the pathways to those good jobs and opportunities, just like creating them. We have to do that by funding education, pre-K, all the way through lifelong learning, including voc ed, including community college and affordable college. That's the way this state becomes what it can, and that's the way our people prosper.
Let's go back to the audience for our second question. Welcome.
As leaders in state and local government, you have had firsthand observation of the impact of declining local government funds. As governor, would you alter the percentage of general revenue funds going to local government funds in your first budget? If so, how would you alter the allocation percentage?
Betty Sutton.
It's very simple for me. When I am governor, if things don't work for everyday folks to create good jobs and opportunities for them and pathways to them, we won't be doing them. Our priorities are going to flip. As somebody who served at local, state, and federal level through the ranks of government, nobody understands it more than I do, how these things shift down, around, and about. And the truth of the matter is, our local governments have been getting clobbered with the Republicans in charge for 24 out of the last 28 years. And it's a matter of where you aim your policies. When I am governor, every policy that we enact with my support is going to be focused on making things work for our communities and everyday families in Ohio. It's not enough to rely on trickle-down economics. It's not enough to make things work for big corporations and CEOs and Wall Street. We have to make things work for Main Street. And when I'm governor, that will be our focus.
Nan Whaley.
Well, as a mayor, I know very intimately how the cuts have affected our communities and how communities have had to do without. I would fully fund local government like it was funded when they started cutting. I believe that the best form of government is actually the one with local communities taking control and prioritizing those needs. When they cut local government fund, what they did was they cut police and fire, first responders, ambulances all across the state of Ohio. We need to get back to basics in Ohio. We need to make sure that mayors and councilmen have a say in what the future of their communities look like. And it needs to be more of a partnership rather than the state, who has been there for 60 years telling us what to do. And I'm excited about that and the opportunity to really work with local communities and my fellow mayors.
Joe Schiavone, you're next.
So right now we have one tax loophole that would generate, if we closed one loophole, it would generate $1.1 billion per year. And so by closing that loophole, which I've proposed in the Senate, we would be able to then do exactly what you asked. We would be able to increase the local government fund to a place where local government officials, people that were elected in their particular geographical area, would have the freedom and flexibility in order to do what's necessary in their communities. Put money towards the drug epidemic. Put money towards attracting businesses from the local level. Put money into business incubators so that we could have young people stay in communities like Youngstown, form ideas into businesses, and then hire people so that we have more young people staying. If they don't have these local dollars to do the things necessary, then they have to go back to the bare bones and can't go into the communities and help with neighborhood redevelopment and blight removal and go all the way through the rebuild of their communities. So it's vitally important that we do this immediately.
Connie Pillage, your turn.
Thank you. Over the last 7 years, our counties, cities, towns, and villages have been under attack by the GOP in Columbus. And what they've been doing is they've been cutting these funds. I have been to 82 counties in this state, and in every single place I've been, I have heard the same complaints about losing local government funds. What the GOP did is they gave lavish tax breaks to billionaires and handouts to special interests, and they paid for those by taking the money out of your police department, your fire department, your roads department, your schools. And what do we have to show for it? Well, we trail the national average in job growth. We are 22nd in education. We're in the top 5 in opioid deaths. These priorities are misplaced and they're not working. And that's why I'm going to make sure that our local governments have the funds they need to be successful and provide the services that we expect government to do. These are just the very basic things. We need a leader who's going to lead for the people of Ohio.
Let's go to our next audience question. Welcome. You're up.
We've talked about infrastructure and job creation, but we've not talked about public transit. Ohio is currently the 14th overall ridership national rankings, and let me preface that. We're 14th overall in public transit ridership nationwide. That ranks us near the bottom, and our state funding is currently at 63 cents per capita, which is right there with North Dakota, which is a significant contrast to our neighboring states on average, which contribute to more than $30 per capita. In recent years, our state has reduced funding for public transit by more than 500%. What will you as governor do to ensure that equitable funding is in place to not just sustain public transit, but to adequately meet the needs of Ohioans?
Joe Schiavone, you're first this time.
I think you hit the question right on the head at the end, the needs of Ohioans. You know, Ohio is so diverse, it's so big geographically. Athens is much different than Cleveland, right? So it's about the needs in that particular geographical area. But the bottom line is people need adequate, affordable, reliable public transportation to get to the doctors. They need that transportation to get to work. They need transportation in order to get ahead in life and get to where they need to go. It's simple stuff. And like you said, we're lagging behind the national average and people are suffering in every community. So in a perfect world, I would love to say, let's connect all the big cities with rail and beef up public transportation across the state. But right now, I think we need to go a smaller bite at the apple where we go to individual communities, just like I talked about the school plan, see what the needs are of that particular geographical area, and then fund those needs right now so that we can give people that opportunity in public transportation, but do it in a city-by-city basis.
Betty Sutton.
When I was in Congress, we fought to get high-speed rail into Ohio, and Governor Kasich turned it away. I believe that public transit is extremely important, and what's about to happen to public transit with the elimination of the MCO taxes is devastating. We can't allow that to happen. Now, I mentioned before that it's about how we approach issues. It's the frame we look through. And when I'm governor, we're going to make sure that we're enacting policies that work for everyday Ohioans to create good jobs and opportunities and pathways to them. I already talked about the pathways that are educational pathways, but there are actually physical pathways that people need to be able to travel to get to the work and have the chance to do what they need to do for themselves and their families. Some of them are physical infrastructure, some of it relies on transit. We have to do better in this state on that. We also have to provide high-speed internet to everybody so that we can participate in a modern economy no matter where we live.
Connie Pillage.
Thank you. The cities are the economic drivers of every region of this state. And if we want our cities to be strong and successful, we need to have effective public transportation. Unfortunately, that's not been the priority for the current administration. The first thing I will do to strengthen public transportation is I'm going to stop taking money away from it. Not only have public transit dollars been taken away, but independent funding streams have been eliminated most recently, and that's going the wrong way. I'm also going to make sure our public transit is safe. That's why I introduced a bill to protect transit workers on the job. And I'm very proud to have been endorsed by the Amalgamated Transit Unions in Toledo and in Cincinnati. And I look forward as governor to fighting to make sure that we have strong, safe, and efficient public transportation so our cities can be strong too.
Dan Whaley.
Just looking at what the state did on the MCO sales tax tells you what they do every time. They made themselves whole, and then they cut it down on counties and public transit and said, you guys figure it out. As governor, we need a real partner in the governor's office. And that's what I think the opportunity is with public transportation. Right now, the funding is so localized that we don't have regional systems. The state could be a true partner with regions and really partner with local communities to create regional transit systems. So that way, as we see regions in our state from like Cleveland to Akron get more and more robust, to make sure that everybody can get to work, no matter if they live in Cleveland and work in Akron, or if they live in Mayfield Heights and come across. It's very important for us to have that. Second, we need to think of all kinds of transit. I'm proud that we were one of the first cities to have bike share as the last mile. We also use Lyft in our transit systems. We have to think broad, from rail all the way to the bicycle to get this done.
Let's move back to the audience for another question. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Dave Cohen, Assistant Director of the Bliss Institute of Applied Politics at the University of Akron. Thank you to the candidates for coming all the way to Cleveland for this debate and for all the partners for putting this on. It is an accepted fact that partisan gerrymandering harms our representative democracy and exacerbates the difficult challenges of actual governing at the state and federal levels. If you are elected governor, and even if Democrats take over the state legislature in 2018 or 2020, how will you work with both political parties to rid Ohio of overly gerrymandered districts and create a redistricting process that will create competitive congressional districts?
Nan Whaley, you go first.
Well, I think the key is that I believe that Democrats have the better ideas, and that if we had a fair fight in this state, we would have a majority of Congress and a majority in the State House and Senate. So let's fix this for long term. Let's not fix this for 10 years or the next time we get the pen and fight over which party. Let's have a system like California and other states do that is fair, because I believe that our party has better ideas, and that if we had a fair fight with fair districts, we're going to win. But if we keep on playing this game where the Republicans have had control of 24 out of 28 years, it's never going to happen. So Democrats are more incentivized to make sure that these are fair districts and a fair fight.
Connie Pillage.
When I won my district in Cincinnati, no one thought I was going to be able to win it because it was so severely gerrymandered. It had been gerrymandered so that it would be possessed by Republicans in perpetuity. But then I won it and I got reelected, and so they gerrymandered it again. I kept my seat, but my colleagues were not so fortunate. And what do we have to show for it? We have seen since then the GOP has had a complete control of our state government. And as a result, we trail the nation in jobs. Our cities are under attack. Our education system is falling behind. And none of this is ever going to change until we have elected representatives who are accountable to the people. They have to be accountable to the people, and the only way for that to happen is if we have competitive districts. I do support the Fair Districts Ohio petition that's being circulated across the state. I think it's going to create an opportunity for us to have fair and balanced government in the state, which is something we very sorely need.
Joe Schiavone.
So a couple of years back, I worked on a bill that put issue 1 on the ballot dealing with state redistricting. So I worked with 2 Republicans and a Democrat on how to get the pen out of the hands of politicians and into the hands of professors and consumer groups, League of Women Voters, people that are actually worried about fairness, not worried about power, because both Democrats and Republicans are guilty of using the pen to their advantage. But now we have to work on the federal issue. And as Connie just mentioned, if politicians aren't going to do it, we've proposed bills time and time again for federal redistricting for Congress. If politicians don't do it, we have a mechanism in the Constitution that says, look, if the people want to do it, get enough signatures, go to work, get to action, and then put this on the ballot. If we can get this on the ballot, it will pass overwhelmingly. So I think we need to make a push in the State House, but also a push on the ground to get the signatures necessary to get it done.
Betty Sutton, you're up.
In 2010, the Republicans tried to take me out of Congress because I was a champion for working men and women. When they couldn't get it done, they used the pen in 2012 to draw me right into a district, and I became a poster child for what gerrymandering can do. We now have 4 Democratic members of Congress from Ohio, even though President Obama as well as Sherrod Brown won the state in 2012. That's what they have done to manipulate the system. Politicians shouldn't be allowed to do that. Not only because it's wrong on its face, it's wrong because it hurts us in governing. It makes us get policies that are extreme, to the right, to the right, to the right. That's what has happened in Ohio. Politicians are so afraid that somebody who is more extreme is going to come along because these districts are so gerrymandered and take them out that they don't worry anymore about working for common sense policies that will work for everyday Ohioans. We should put it on the ballot, and we should elect leaders who are committed to fair districts. That's the kind of governor we need.
Our next question is from Twitter. Let's hear it.
Good evening. My name is Bashara, and I'm a member of the City Club Debate Committee. And the question from Twitter that we've received and chosen is Ohio is ranked 45th in the nation in college affordability. How will you specifically, as Ohio governor, make college more affordable for future students?
Always wanted to know what Twitter sounded like. Betty Sutton.
Thank you. Thank you. Look, this again is one of those pathways to good jobs and opportunities. When I was in Congress, I voted for the largest aid package for college since the GI Bill. It is a critical component of how we're going to get from here to the future in a way that sustains our state and our people. I am in favor of free community college, and I am in favor of finding a way to make sure that college is affordable. It comes back to this whole idea. It matters where we aim our policies. It matters what our priorities are. To me, education is a priority, from universal pre-K right through college education, vocational education, any of those pathways that get us to those good jobs that our people need. That's what we need. We need commitment, and we need focus, and we need to aim where it matters. And college affordability is key.
Dan Whaling.
Well, the last time I spoke at the City Club last month, I unveiled a plan to provide free community college. It's a really actually inexpensive effort, and even states like Tennessee is beating Ohio when it comes to free community college. And we're leaving nearly $90 million of federal dollars on the table by not taking it. So I think we need to do the free community college plan that I unveiled here. And then I think also we need to make sure that we have pathways for vocational tech and also onto full four-year college. One of the issues I think this governor has had is he is very interested in really big, shiny places. So he pays attention to the large schools and doesn't pay attention to the smaller four-year institutions where a lot of our folks can afford to go. And we've seen some mismanagement. As governor, I'll make sure that we have smart trustees that are actually paying attention to the budget in all of these colleges, regardless if they're not just Ohio State University.
Joe Schiavone.
So I think that there's front-end relief and back-end relief here. We're talking about making college more affordable for people, so we have to invest in it at the state level so that the colleges don't have to go back on the kids and then jack up the tuition every year. You know, instead of fixing it, the legislature just does freezes or caps. Well, that doesn't get anything accomplished. It accomplishes it for that year, but not long term. But I think on the back end, there's some ways that we can be really creative to help young people with student debt. I just proposed a bill in the General Assembly that says, look, if you buy a home within 5 years after graduating from a state university, the state would pick up half of your tuition debt. That way you're incentivizing young people to stay, and then you're giving them the opportunity to stay in communities like mine in Youngstown or some of these smaller places where we desperately need to keep our talent. But you have to incentivize that. We have to invest it on the front, but also on the back, and I think we can do it in a combined way.
Connie Pilic.
As a mom who has sent 2 children to college, I know exactly how expensive it is. I put myself through college with an ROTC scholarship, and when I graduated, I entered active duty, my service, in exchange for my education. And I was very honored to wear the uniform of our country, but if the only way our kids can pay for college is by putting their lives on the line, I think we have a problem. That's why my education stimulus plan has a means to make college debt-free for middle-class Ohioans and a way to assist those who want to go into public service after graduating. Not everybody's going to go to college, however, and that's why my education stimulus plan focuses as well on workforce development programs and skilled apprenticeship programs. And if we implement my plan, Ohio's going to deliver the best education in the country.
It is time now for closing remarks. By prior agreement, the order of closing remarks will vary slightly from the opening remarks. Candidates, once again, you have 60 seconds. Joe Schiavone, we'll begin with you.
Yeah, thank you everybody for coming tonight. You know, people are sick of politics for good reason. You know, my wife, Margaret, and I talk about this every night. You know, it is insane that we have people lying in Congress, that we have people that are misrepresenting the facts every single day at every level. You know, all people want is somebody that's good. All people want is somebody that cares and understands them. All people want is somebody that says, look, it's not about me, it's about everybody else. You know, that's how I've always acted in the Senate. And when I'm going back to these places, that's what I feel. You know, I was just in Canton the other night, and this teacher comes up to me and she says, Joe, we need you so bad because we need somebody that understands us. We need somebody that gets it. We need somebody that cares. We need somebody that listens. That's the kind of stuff that drives me every single day to make this place better. That's the kind of thing that drives me when I think about my 3- and 5-year-olds and what kind of state they're going to live in. That's the stuff that's real. That's the stuff that's meaningful. And that's the stuff that's going to get us across the finish line.
Thank you, Joe Schiavone. Connie Pilic.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for being here. I have always been drawn to service. That's why I signed up to fight for our country in the military. And after 8 years on active duty, I've continued to fight for my community. As an attorney, I represented people like my client, Jean, who had no health insurance when her son was diagnosed with cancer. She was desperate and got sucked in by a predatory lender who pushed her into foreclosure. I took on the predatory lender and I saved her home. And as a state representative, I have taken on the special interests and I have fought for working families. That's why I have a plan to roll back the handouts, rebuild our state, and put Ohioans back to work. That's why I'm going to invest in public education, not those for-profit scams that are shortchanging our kids. And that's why I'm going to take on the health insurance companies and make sure health care is a right and not a privilege. Ohio deserves a governor who can win. I'm Connie Pilic, and I would love to have your support.
Thank you, Connie Pilic. Betty Sutton.
Thank you. We need someone who knows the tricks that the Republicans pull. And I have a record of taking on tough fights and winning them. Now, I've told you a little bit tonight about some of the things that I have done to save the auto industry jobs, those 60,000 through the Cash for Clunker program, and about putting firefighters and police officers and teachers back to work. I've talked about using the Recovery Act to get our infrastructure rebuilt and what we can do if we aim our policies in a new way. The reason why I have told you about those accomplishments and that record is not because I rest on that record. It's because I want you to understand that I am committed to taking on the rigged system, and I have a record of winning tough fights. I was proud to stand with President Barack Obama to pass the Affordable Care Act and to pass an amendment that stopped insurance companies from discriminating based on pre-existing conditions. As your governor, I'll take on the tough fights, and together we will win them.
Thank you, Betty Sutton. We now turn to Nan Whaley for your closing remarks.
I want to thank the City Club for putting this on, and it's always a special place to be here and appreciate their great leadership. If there's one thing I want to leave you with tonight, it's that false claims and more broken promises will not move our state forward. If we want to move the state forward, we need a governor who's ready to act boldly, a governor who's willing to face our challenges head on, a governor who isn't afraid of new ideas. So if you believe in the dignity of work, then why can't we create good-paying jobs with wages you can raise a family on? If you believe in the power of education, then why can't we make high-quality pre-K a reality for every child in Ohio? And if you believe that heroin truly is a cancer, eating away at Ohio from within, then why shouldn't the drug companies who made this mess pay to clean it up? If you believe Ohio's best days can be ahead of us, then I hope you'll join me, Nan Whaley, on the race for governor.
Nan Whaley, thank you. You have been tuned into a primary debate featuring Democratic candidates for governor.
This debate was coordinated by the City Club of Cleveland. Media partners include IdeaStream and WKYC Channel 3.
We want to thank the candidates for participating in this debate and to our studio audience for their thoughtful questions.
For my colleague Russ Mitchell, I'm Karen Kassler. Thank you very much for tuning in, and good night from Cleveland.